This word Lent is known by some, but for many, it's probably the first time that they're hearing about Lent.
They are stable. There's a sense of permanence. There's a sense we can trust this.
It's not based on feeling. It's based on fact.
You would never see your parents. You know what I mean? They would come in, grab something to drink, went back to church, gone the whole day.
Don't rush to Easter Sunday, but just experience Easter Friday and experience a little bit of the waiting and the anticipation for Easter Sunday.
Often the real me is smaller, but it's truer and it's freer than the false me.
Hey, what's happening, families? We were here, and today is not our typical stuff we didn't say on Sunday podcast, but this one is actually looking forward towards Easter. Now, I hope you are on a drive from work, going home, chilling, making dinner at home, whatever, because I really believe that what we are hoping to achieve today is more of a lounge conversation to help you intentionally plan for Easter. I'll tell you why this is important. We can let this season pass us by and miss the opportunity as people who follow the way to actually pause, think deeply, be profoundly grateful, and allow our hearts to be changed by what God has done. And so I have two Easter Lent experts in the building. I said this earlier and then I choked on a halls, and so it's not as funny as it was earlier. But nonetheless, Lisa Shippey in the building. Lisa, thank you so much for being here. And Karen Titterton as well. Both not just lovers of Easter and Lent, but faithful followers of Jesus for a very long time, longer than most you watching have been alive. And so it's great. But still
old.
Look 25.
Very old.
I didn't finish the sentence. They still look 25. Guys, welcome. I hope you're doing well. I want to jump straight into it today. What does Easter mean for you? We'll start with you, Karen.
Easter's, I think, one of my favorite holidays, more so than Christmas. It's about celebrating that our Redeemer lives, and it's not like Christmas where there's gifts and all these type of things, but it's this moment that we can reflect that even after the worst thing has happened, something good can happen.
That's great.
Something good comes from it. And yeah, it's why we believe. Well, for me, for everybody, it's why we believe. Why we do Easter is why we believe he's risen, know. Yeah.
Lise?
Yeah, it's similar. It really is returning to what's most important in our faith, intentionally returning to it, revisiting it. And even though we've been Christians for however many years, as we return to it, Jesus meets us in it again and again. And each time it's fresh and each time it's amazing.
I love that. I was actually thinking through how the calendar is important for the Christian.
Yeah.
Because there's like a tone that is being set. And one author put it this way, that we no longer function under a Pharaoh calendar, but a Yahweh calendar, where there's things we repeatedly practice at certain times of the year.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we need to remember in order to keep doing. And I think that's what we're hoping for, is that Easter can be a time where there's profound remembering, so that actually there's meaningful doing afterwards.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I think it's powerful.
And I think even just riffing off that, the whole idea, the calendar moving from a Pharaoh calendar, as it were, it's the reason the Israelites returned again and again and again to those festivals. It was so much part of their identity.
Yep, absolutely.
It's grounding us in our identity and connecting us to what's important. And there's a sense of connectedness with the body of Christ all over the world.
Absolutely.
It's not just me. It's
not
an
just
us
me.
thing.
Yeah.
And maybe that even segues, because that's tradition.
Yeah.
and which can be like a 4-letter swear word, especially if you're slightly younger. But you know what I find interesting? I find more and more young people wanting tradition, actually. You know, it's actually why we ended up doing the benediction at the end of the service and all these things. But I think it's such an important part of the faith to have things that you keep doing that keep doing things to you. And I know traditions are something that is close to your heart. We actually had this chat last week about stuff you were remembering growing up. But what does that kind of mean to you and the importance of tradition?
Yeah. So I think like you said, tradition is not a threat to us. It's not a threat to our freedom. Tradition is it's what grounds us, like Lisa said, to a greater body.
It's great.
It's almost a unification in a way that with Easter, with Lent, with Pentecost, with Advent, when we celebrate these things, we're celebrating it not just as a movement, as every nation, Bryanson or every nation, but we're celebrating it with the greater church.
Absolutely.
And it's so powerful in that unification, that whether you are Anglican, Presbyterian, or whatever, all these people are celebrating these things at the same time. And yes, you might differ about a couple of things, but it is insanely unifying. It makes us part of this ancient truth. It roots us in this truth that people have been practicing for centuries. And it's evolved, and yes, it's changed, but it's so important to be part of something that has stood the test of time for centuries. Well, and we are part of that and those traditions. And I think for me, what tradition brings, and yes, I think some of us, that we don't like the word and we're scared of the word. I said to Lisa today, I mentioned to somebody at work who's a Christian that I'm going to go and speak about, the fact that we're doing stations. And she said, we don't have to do stations, just like it is so like not what we do as a Pentecostal or a charismatic movement. But yet it's that, just that, being quiet, just taking a moment with the rest of Christianity. And for me, that's important. And the thing about tradition and doing the Apostles' Creed or learning the Psalms or reciting the Psalms, it's a place you can go when you're not feeling it, if you know what I mean. So yes, during worship, we might all be dancing and lifting our hands and whatever, because we're feeling it.
Yeah.
But like late at night when you're worried about work, or you're worried about that exam, or you're worried about what is it that you can fall back on when the lights are actually out, so you can't grab your Bible and you can just go, I believe in God the Father, the maker of the heavens and the earth, and Christ his Son. Those are powerful things that we can fall back on, I believe. So
I think as well, just it made me just think again of how the world is so unstable. Things are changing so quickly, particularly in recent weeks. I mean, we're all saying,
Trump is
my goodness me, the last couple of weeks have been crazy. And there's something about these traditions that, as you say, stand the test of time. They are stable. There's a sense of permanence. There's a sense we can trust this. Where so much else is shaking and trembling, this is rock solid.
Yeah, so good. I heard they're going to let out Easter tariffs, by the way.
Of course.
Be on the lookout. Be on the lookout. I'll never forget, and maybe, Karen, I don't know if this is being too personal. I was actually standing outside this room when you called me to say your brother-in-law had passed. And I remember that call like it was yesterday. I remember your tears. I remember your words. I remember what you were saying. You were saying to the boys. And I think when I think of this idea of traditions, and sometimes it doesn't hit us until we actually share stories of how we navigated hardship
Exactly.
and difficulty
Mm.
through the simple things that we were dragged to church to experience. You know, I don't know if you can reflect on that in terms of how some of the traditions you've learned for decades allowed you to be present in that moment, to be present in Andrew, your husband's father's death. Another moment I'll remember for a very long time. Yeah.
It is that whole thing about if you're steeped in it, you can go on autopilot sometimes. If I don't know if I make myself clear, but and it's not autopilot obviously because God is flying the plane, but it is just that when you can no longer, God is there, you know, but it is because He's always been there and because we know His promises so well. And, you know, there's that, you know, I raise my eyes to the hills. Where does my hope come from? My hope comes from the Creator of heaven and earth. And the reason I know it is because we kept on singing it and we kept on saying it. I might not be able to point to it in the Bible, but it's something that is, when I need it,
It's embedded.
It's embedded. It's embedded. And then, you know, when you don't have time to, and you don't have the right words, you really can just rest in those things that are embedded in your psyche because of, just because of the things that you've repeated all over your life. And yes, as you've mentioned, well, you didn't mention again, but Lisa and I have been Christians for a long time, and we actually reflected on that before we came to speak to you, because, you know, for a very long part of my Christian walk, I've been part of a traditional charismatic movement that has been very afraid of tradition.
Yeah.
And, you know, wanted to throw everything out of, you know, if it's tradition, how can it be good? But I find that maybe because I don't know how much my kids have to fall back on in times of trouble. You know, what is it that they know really well? And even if it's just Psalm 23, you know, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, or, you know, about being in the valleys and all those type of things, but at least you know it.
The stuff.
And, you know, that whole thing that we used to say in the charismatic church, you know it in your knower, you know it, but you know it. And it's not based on feeling. It's based on fact.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
that, you know, that lovely sort of metaphor of if you're flying a plane and you hit the clouds, just trust your instruments. You know how you don't know if you're upside down or if you're right way up, or if you're flying into a mountain range or what's happening. Don't trust just what you see. Look at your instruments. You know that you can trust them, and you can trust.
It's exactly that.
The goodness and kindness of God.
He's a good God. He's a good God, and
merciful.
He has been
Yeah.
over the centuries for people, and it's important that we know that.
I take long drives with Lisa for work at times. Her and I are part of a great company called Thinkspiration. And in the long drives, we chat about a lot of things. But I remember one particular drive, we spoke about Lent, actually. I think we chatted about it because you pointed to some kind of landscape and it reminded you of some place, or I can't remember what it was. But this word Lent is known by some, but for many, it's probably the first time that they're hearing about Lent. And so I wanted to allow you to geek out a bit and share with us a little bit about the importance of Lent, what Lent is about, and how you've experienced Lent, what it's done for you and your reflection and thoughts.
I think, well, firstly, I'm certainly not an expert, but I'm loving my journey into it, never as an obligation, but as an opportunity just to draw closer. As an opportunity, it's sort of a season of returning to what's important, returning, coming close. And the other lovely bits of reading that I've done on it are where it's modeled, the 40 days of Lent modeled on Jesus' 40 days in the wilderness.
Nice.
And a lot of the contemplative authors at the moment talk about crafting your own wilderness, crafting a space where you can separate yourself to reflect, to face yourself, as it were, to face your humanity. Jesus came face to face with his humanity and had opportunity after opportunity to deny what was important, and again he just stood true. And it's an opportunity, it's not an obligation. None of these things are because I have to. It's because I want to, and I feel the transformation that happens. I feel the intimacy with God. I feel the deeper concern for the people around me. I feel that community, and I mean the outcomes and the fruit of it are always just so beneficial. So some people will fast something, stop doing something. I've been really working this Lent. I've given up being controlling in order to satisfy my anxiety. You can ask me later how that's working out for me. Sometimes well, sometimes not so well. But I've really made such a concerted effort, just to do that, just to face. I mean, you think of Jesus's temptations. Turn this bread into stone. That whole thing of, was he going to use his power for his own survival?
Yeah, yes.
Jump from the temple. Showmanship. I want to look brilliant. I want to look, all those motivations that we need to sometimes face in ourselves. Then, will you worship me? Was that last temptation? And just how we play into what the world sees as powerful, what the world sees, and we don't realize how the narrative that we're constantly socialized into is one that is actually so foreign. I'm not just talking about the sin of drinking, drugs, and rock and roll, as it were. I'm talking about the motivations we have that are actually self-serving and actually our false selves, as we say. And I think that's another thing that I love about Lent, is that opportunity to come back to the real me, and to put aside those egotistic mechanisms where I feel like I need to be hard and very defensive. I need to be bigger than I am. No, often the real me is smaller, but it's truer and it's freer than the false me. And I find Lent an opportunity to really revisit those things. And I found so often how it's freed me up so much in my relationships with people, and how I think about myself,
That's great.
how I think about my future, how I think about my usefulness to God. So it's a journey.
Yeah.
That's great.
So I think the other thing about Lent that for me is important, and maybe I'm a little bit hard on the tradition, but it is the fact that such a large portion of the Christian community does this.
Yeah.
And also what I love about it is that it's 40 days, so it's not just a week or whatever, but it's 40 days where you are constantly in that rhythm.
Yeah.
And I mean, we speak about rhythms all the time and the importance of rhythms. And often, I find that often as I come out of Lent, it's something that I realize. So obviously, about Lent is sometimes something that you give up, but it's also about alms giving and things like that. But I often find that the thing that I've given up, I realize I can actually live without.
Yeah.
And that it's good for me. And I'm surprised often at how many people I speak to that actually give something up for Lent. And it's just lovely. And it's a like, why are you not having dessert?
Sure.
Oh, I'm giving it up for Lent. And it just opens up a whole conversation. And it's just, I think it's a lovely tradition, just 40, but because it's not quick, because it's longer than a month, it's really becomes a rhythm and a part of life, and a part of the way that you think and live, you know. And I have to say that I'm very happy that the church has decided to take this time to actually look a little bit at Lent and just the idea behind it, and and that it's not just about fasting, and it's not just about giving up, but it's also the rhythm of what is it that you would like to become a rhythm in your life.
Lovely.
What type of giving, what type of outreach, what type of opening your home, what type of whatever it is that you would like to do. And I mean, it's excellent. I mean, and you start these things often, and these things, as a church, we start these initiatives, and it's stuff that lasts for decades after that, so it's
true.
It becomes part of our rhythm and part of the way we do life.
Absolutely. I am currently reading Greg McNone's book, Essentialism, and his whole theory is like eliminate as many things as possible and find the vital few. And when I think of Lent, in fact, when I think of Easter, growing up in a township, rural background, Easter we called it Pesika, was so long, so tedious.
Just church service after church service.
You would never see your parents.
Oh, right,
they would come in, grab something to drink, went back to church, gone the whole day, and it was massive. People came in droves. But I think through the opportunity of Easter and Lent to simplify your life to the things that matter the most. Because when you think about it, we don't get the privilege of taking our houses, our cars on Judgment Day. We are left with the bare essentials. Our trust in God, our belief in what He's done. And you're so accurate. Like the Christian faith stems from Christ has resurrected. Like you can't, there's no other foundation except Jesus Christ Himself. And I look forward to the opportunity of this weekend simplifying our lives to things that matter the most. And I'm hoping that the Stations of the Cross can do that. And I wanted us to maybe just touch on some of the stations, just to give people a sense of what's coming up. But let me put you guys on the spot before I jump into the stations. So could you give examples of what you have done for Lent? Stuff you've given up, stuff you've introduced over a 40-day period, just so we can give people some examples. So that in the next Lent, maybe they could do similarly.
Social media, chocolate.
No social media, no chocolate.
Alcohol.
No alcohol.
So, TV. Those, I mean, I haven't done all of those. I've done some of those. So that those are some of the ideas that people have,
And introduced during that season, did you add anything extra to your habits?
I think it's been just trying to give more, find ways to be helpful to people with resource, trying to channel more resources to be a blessing to people.
Good.
Yeah.
Love that.
For me, also stuff like social media, but also meals, breakfast, lunch, actual not fasting proper, but, I'm going to bring my kids in here as well, but my kids tend to, Katie particularly fasts during Lent. Anna gives up stuff during Lent, and I'm going to put him on the spot, but Menzi also fasts from the previous night to dinner, and then he gets to us, and he has, after 7, he has all 3 meals.
That's right. Nancy.
But it is just, but it's that rhythm, and it's knowing that you're doing something for a reason. And I think introducing things. Last year we introduced dinners on Wednesdays. It's I always say to people, if you can come for dinner on a Wednesday. Yeah. We always cook extra on a Wednesday. So I think those type of things and it's something that we introduced, and it's something that we still do. So I think that's what I mean, that it becomes a part of your life. Yep.
I love that.
Love.
So let me give a challenge to everybody who's watching before we touch on the stations. It doesn't matter how long we have until Easter. For the next couple of days, give up something, but also give something, just to prepare your mind, to allow yourself to be in that space of, Lord, I actually am anticipating. I love Fleming Rutledge wrote a book called The Crucifixion, and she speaks about the longing of the heart when we are anticipating his crucifixion, because we know it's coming, but our hearts are constantly longing for that solution that actually can only be found in the crucifixion. So give up something, but also give something. Give to the poor, give to the needy, open up your home, share some meals. Beautiful examples of how we can ready our hearts. So we're going to do Stations of the Cross, and I want to thank you both for encouraging us in this direction. And I'm really looking forward to it. Our whole staff is looking forward to it. And so I wanted to give an opportunity for anyone who's watching who's never been to have a precursor of what they can look forward to. What are some of the things that are going to be at the stations? What are we hoping that they can do and also achieve?
Well, the reason for the stations is it's an opportunity to very reflectively and personally journey with Jesus through his last few days and last few hours, in a very intimate and reflective way. It's a personal journey, and what we do is we set up stations. We set up areas or spaces on which to reflect on a certain part of the scripture and to apply it to your life. Often there's something practical to do. It's not something necessarily that you talk to anyone else about. There's typically a guide, and we're preparing a guide for the church for our stations where you can go through it, you can read, you can reflect. There is something little that you can do. For example, at one of the stations there is seed that you're going to put into soil. You're going to bury that seed in the soil, as it were. Bury something, let it go. Let's see what is going to come of this. That concept of unless you die to yourself, no life can come of this. So that's a kind of example of something that you'll do. And typically through the years there've been 14 stations, Catholics, the Anglicans, etc. But we're going to set up 8, as well as a foot washing station. And people have an opportunity to just visit each of these stations in a specific order. All the guidelines are there, and it's a journey for you and God. It's between you and God.
Yeah. I think for me, stations is just a way to slow down through the last days of Jesus. I mean, we do the whole thing from Gethsemane to the empty tomb, and so that's the stations that you're going to experience. But I think when we read it in a couple of chapters, and all we would like to do through stations is that you just slow down and actually experience it, and not just go from sentence to sentence in John or Mark or Luke or Matthew, but actually just take time. How was the denial for Jesus, and just take a moment. If somebody that you are so closely acquainted with on a day decides he doesn't know you. If Yusuf all of a sudden has to just say, you don't know me 3 times, I mean, that just think, and that's all we're asking, is that you just think for a moment that was not just personal for us, it was personal for Jesus, and just take a moment. Don't rush to Easter Sunday, but just experience Easter Friday and experience a little bit of the waiting and the anticipation for Easter Sunday.
I think it's a case of stepping into the narrative, feeling what it would have felt like, thinking what you would have been thinking if you were one of the disciples. in that time experiencing this. And the other thing that I always love to remember is how what Jesus said to his disciples at Gethsemane, could you not watch with me just for one hour? Won't you just stay with me, guys? Can you just hang in there? Can you just be with me? And in a sense, going through the stations is keeping vigil with Jesus. It's not looking away. It's not disappearing, needing to go and rush off and check my social media or whatever else I've got. But it's staying with him in that process, not looking away, not turning away, staying close, feeling those uncomfortable feelings, right the way through till the amazement of the empty tomb.
Yes.
Love that. The Hebrew says we don't have a high priest who doesn't empathize with us. And for me, I'm partly excited because I think as you're going from station to station, you realize the humanness of Jesus' emotion throughout an agonizing, number of days where you said this on Sunday when we were doing the walkthrough that, because we watch this in a movie or hear it in a sermon, it feels like it happened in a short space of time. But the agony, the torment, the torture, the betrayal, the being alone, it was not just
The
an hour.
unfairness,
You know what I mean?
injustice
The injustice
of it all.
True.
But
so I think it's good.
also, just how hard Gethsemane was for him. Again, I mean, I used the denial of Peter, but also God, asking God to take this away and then choosing to do it anyway. But how hard it was for him.
Yeah. With you sharing what you're sharing, my dad's in hospital now. He's got some heart things, so he had to go in for a check to see whether he's going to have a surgery or whatever it is. So my mom is there. Now, my parents are divorced. My mom went down so he can cook for my dad. And I'm like, guys, just get married and just figure this out, But part of why she's there is this apprehension that if anything happens, like who's going to be there to do anything? And I think of the humanness of that emotion, the anxiety, the fear, the wondering.
Yeah.
And you just think like, how was Mary feeling? The mother of Jesus. How was Mary Magdalene feeling, who was there at almost every point of the story? You going, man, the moment that the Roman centurion's eyes are open to the reality that this is the Lord.
Absolutely.
What did he see? What did he experience of this man's suffering and perseverance? And then yet, like Peter, who's denied but still trying to watch. And I think so many of our lives fit into so many of those emotions, and the ability to allow them to find solace in the story of Jesus, that in anxiety and fear and suffering, God is there. He's so sufficient, so I'm excited about it. So I wanted to ask about your favorite Easter or Lent experience and why it was your favorite.
It's so tough because I've got so many, but I think I have to point to when I became a Christian. I mean, I grew up in a Presbyterian church, and the Easter traditions were lovely, but I think that they took on a whole lot of new meaning for me when I actually met Jesus. And I went to a Sunday school, children's church camp at Easter at a campsite called Rocky Valley. And I will never forget, there was worship every night, and it was in worship that I realized this is not just a social, cultural thing. This is real. And I met Jesus on that camp, and I'll never forget on the Sunday morning, there's an outdoor amphitheater with a huge cross, just being on my knees, having communion. And I think that's got to be my most precious Easter memory. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I think I also probably have a couple, but I'm going to just share a recent one. We were away last Easter. We were on the KZN coast, and there was a sunrise service, which is absolutely beautiful. But the interesting thing was that it was at the bar.
Nice.
So
I like it.
So for some other reason, the guy that owns the bar on the beach,
the local pub,
opens his pub for a sunrise service on Easter.
Just love it.
And so I don't know how many of you have been to a sunrise service, but you literally go to church when it's still dark, and then you watch the sunrise, and it's just so beautiful. And the whole "He is risen" thing, obviously. But I think what was so precious about it is there was no music and lights and whatever, but it was just all of these people who would probably have carry on staying in the bar after the sunrise service, just saying to each other, "He is risen indeed." And people that I don't know, some people were lifting their hands, some weren't, some were sitting, but it was people from all denominations, all walks of life. Everybody that walked past on the beach saw that there was something going on and that there was a service. And it was just, for me, it was very powerful, just this, to be with people that I don't know at all and being able to look them in the eye and say, "He's risen indeed." So that was quite beautiful.
We used to do sunrise services on the top of Northcliffe Hill.
Oh, yeah.
So getting up there in the pitch dark and watching the horizon start to glow.
Yeah,
just so moving.
Yeah.
So moving.
And that's the whole thing about the stations as well, is that it's not just somebody standing in the middle preaching or you listening to a podcast. It's bringing all your senses. It's the whole spiritual, physical, tactile experience that makes it different to your other experiences. Yeah.
That's awesome. We're almost at landing point, and this has been super helpful. I really hope everyone who's watching has gleaned something, learned something, but I want to give each of you an opportunity to maybe share a parting thought. If there was something you would love to encourage the hearer to say this Easter ... what would you say?
I would say this Easter, let's journey through that Passion Week, as it were, that week leading up to Easter, and be ready for Jesus to show himself to us in ways we didn't expect. And be ready for him to say things to us about ourselves, our lives, that we didn't expect and we weren't even looking for. And let's trust him to surprise us and meet us in moments that are deeply transformative.
Love that.
Yeah.
I would just want to ask people to slow down. And just take time and reflect, pray, respond in the way that you are led at that time when you're doing the stations. Just don't think about the next one. Just sit in the moment and just, whether it is we have a station where we reflect on, Jesus with the two sinners next to him on the cross and what he says, and just take time and be honest. I think just be honest. You're not talking to somebody, you're not saying this to somebody, it's just you there. Just be honest with yourself. When we talk about have you denied, just be honest. Have you all these things. Just take time, be still, slow down and be honest with yourself in that moment, and for it to have an impact. I think
it's amazing. One last parting shot. Thank you so much, Karen, Lisa, and I really think this is going to be helpful. A personal parting shot for me. During Easter time, I've got friends of mine, I hope you're watching this actually, who always say, during Easter I'll always go to my old church. By old church, they mean like, our old, like rural, like churches. They're
Yes.
like, they do Easter properly.
Properly.
You know what I mean? And I always smile at those comments because I think there is something that we are longing for in those seasons. So it's almost like we all know there is something that we need to grasp beyond just what we always do. And there are places where churches can curate experiences, but also there's the work that one must do personally in their own space, in their own life, in their own home, with their own family and friends that you just can't negate. And I've shared so many times some of the mistakes I've made planting the church, one being prayerlessness in that first year, but also allowing the busyness of church to override the tradition of church. And here's what I mean by that. God is building his church, and he's just chosen certain things to do it. And so I remember when we planted, I said, man, guys, imagine if we could have communion every Sunday. And then we planted, we can't have communion every Sunday, how are we going to pass it around? And I'll never forget Pastor Steve Marl during seminary saying, why can't you? Why can't you inconvenience yourself to do that? Like cut off most of your announcements and do communion. And it was a challenging thought for all of us because we're so used to church.
The trappings of what's normal.
Yeah, and much of it is good, which is why
very sincere.
In this generation, the majority who are watching, stop deconstructing the wrong things. It will hurt you when you are killing the things that are actually meant to give you life. And there's things in tradition that you just can't kill. Now, you can't always get it at every church, but for you to create a rhythm in your life where these things are important is critical. So I'm hoping that somehow by the end of the year we can figure out how to do this communion thing, because I think I feel it's one of the things that's missing, that regular communion, not just monthly, but opportunities to reflect on Christ. And so I'm saying that on air so that I make sure to follow through on it. Lord help. Guys, love you. We'll see you soon. Lisa, Karen, the experts.
Egg experts.
The egg experts. Bless you.